Please clap. That to me is the best way to sum up Jeb Bush's performance in and contribution to the 2016 presidential campaign. Please clap. Of course, I'm getting that from a relatively recent campaign rally that he held before last night's South Carolina primary, in which he tried to bust some joke that was supposed to bring down the House, and yet he was met with silence. You could practically see the tumbleweed blowing across the bottom of your TV screen, and so he had to resort to actually asking his audience, stacked with his own supporters, please clap. Boy, oh boy, it was such a sad moment, such a sad scene, and so emblematic of how Bush has done as a candidate in this election. To think that at this point, exactly a year ago, Jeb Bush was still the apparent Republican frontrunner. He was the heir apparent to the throne. Everyone assumed that he would at least stand the best chance of winning the Republican nomination in this election. I remember at this point a year ago, my complaint was, God, really? Another Bush? Another Bush in the White House, quite possibly? 2 Bushes wasn't enough? And yet now, a year later, thanks to the entry of Donald Trump into the campaign and seemingly little or nothing else, look at what's happened to Jeb Bush. The lesson to be learned from this is a lesson about the nature of the American system of government and the political character of the American people. The American system is not as geared towards or stacked in favor of entrenched political elites and establishments as a lot of its detractors make it out to be. Clearly, it is much more feasible than many critics of the American system have claimed for outsider candidates to come in and just upset the entire apple cart the way Donald Trump has done ever since he jumped into the race last summer. And ever since then, nothing has been the same. Not just in this campaign, but seemingly in American politics at large. What can I say about Jeb Bush? I praise him for finally doing this, but simply because, as I mentioned in one of my recent videos, it is critical that Donald Trump not only not win the presidency, but not even win the Republican nomination at all. And like I explained in that video, which was just after Lindsey Graham bowed out of the race, we need these also-ran candidates to peace out already. It's time to ride off into the sunset. John Kasich, and of course now just Ben Carson. Because I was looking at the results, the returns from the South Carolina primary last night on CNN. It seems that Donald Trump won a percentage score in the mid-30s, which is where he usually sits. And then the next 2 candidates behind him were, of course, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who had, I think, roughly 22-point-something% of the vote. And then you had Bush, Kasich, and Carson, each of whom won something in the neighborhood of 7.9 or 7-point-something% of the vote. Add up all those last 3 vote totals, Bush's, Kasich's, and Carson's vote totals, and you would have had basically another Rubio or Cruz in terms of the number of the percentage of votes that would have represented. If all 3 of those candidates had been out of the race, then while it's true Donald Trump would probably have picked up some of those votes, at the same time, I imagine most of them would have gone to either Rubio or Cruz. If only because, given that Kasich and Bush are such relatively moderate characters, I have a hard time believing that people who cast their votes for either of those candidates would ever have turned around and given their support to a virtually lunatic character like Donald Trump. What can I say? Just like I said after Lindsey Graham dropped out of the race, these also-rans need to get on out of here. Peace out and fall back already. The main thing right now, the priority, is to stop Donald Trump. I think that there are 2 main problems facing the Republican Party as a whole right now. How to prevent Barack Obama from replacing Justice Antonin Scalia with a moderate or a liberal on the Supreme Court, and how to solve a problem like the Donald. Those are the 2 main challenges facing the GOP, the grand old party, at this moment in time. And yet, these candidates who insist on staying in the race, even though it's clear they have no chance of winning, it's as if they just refuse to see the light and listen to reason. It really makes me wonder whether they're in this for the good of the country, first and foremost, or just for themselves. Because, especially at a point like this, when it's clear that it's basically impossible for them to win the nomination, or even to come close to winning it, for them to stay in the race and keep splitting the non-Donald Trump vote too many ways and siphoning votes away from more realistic alternatives to Trump, makes me really think that they're more in this for themselves and their own egos than for the good of the country. Because clearly, what would be best for the country at this point would be for them to drop out. It really makes me call these candidates' motives into question. What are you really after? Are you trying to do what's best for the U.S. and for the world at large? Or Are you just in it for prestige or accomplishment or a sense that you've done something meaningful with your life? Never mind that both men are very accomplished men in their own right already. John Kasich has already made it to the governorship of Ohio, and I almost said Johnny Carson. Big difference. No relation. Ben Carson is already the most renowned brain surgeon in the world or something like that. So why this need to run for president? At this point, I find it impossible to conclude that they're really staying in this race out of a sense that they're doing what's right for the country. Or maybe that is what's motivating them and they just aren't waking up and smelling the poll numbers and more importantly, the electoral results. I don't know. Kasich and Carson, please, I beg you, drop out of the race as soon as possible. There's no shame in admitting that you took a good, solid, good faith stab at running for president and lost. This is bigger than you, okay? The world, the United States, and the Republican Party cannot afford a Donald Trump presidency. Please don't allow that to happen inadvertently by being so stubborn that you feel you have to stay in this race even when you can't crack 10% support in a primary. Please do the right thing and fall out.